Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having invited me to take part in the discussion today. And as has been explained, my background really is one where I've been working in the health sector for a long time, both in government and in the NGO sector. So, with respect to our discussion today, in terms of how can funders ensure that partnership is the norm in efforts to drive system change, I'm going to try and deal with a few very simple concepts. I think the first one for me is that, and it may seem obvious, but it's very important that the funder takes time to understand the country context and where they're providing support. And if they're working with government and other stakeholders, to make sure that one, to be effective, say, in partnering with non-governmental organizations working in the public sector, for instance, to make sure that the government policies, plans, or priorities or objectives of the sectors in which they are working are really well understood. And then the second is that the support does need to be provided in a framework within which either, if it's government or the local entities, have a very strong say in what gets done, and that they own the agenda, and then in the framework in which the partnership is working. And if it's government in particular, I think that is important. But the different entities or partners or organizations supported must feel that they also have a voice. And I think that's the only way in which you can get the best kind of progress. That's where you build commitment on both sides. And most importantly, that's how you build trust. Because at the end of the day, without the trust and the feeling that it can never be a completely equal partnership, but that the funded entity that is being supported does have a voice, that's when you get the best out of them. And they will give the funder or the philanthropic organization the best advice in terms of making their contribution impactful. I think the other, which sometimes doesn't always happen as well as it should, is that the way in which the support is structured, and I think more and more this is starting to happen, it must be structured in a way in which it builds local capacity. And the implementation approaches should work towards building sustainable interventions or helping the country or entities to work towards that. And I think what has been said is most importantly, and this can sometimes be something that is very subtle and sometimes not said, but there has to be a working together in a true spirit of partnership and mutual respect. I think this has come up in a number of the questions, but often they are very unequal relationships. But if they are to be impactful, they are to be sustained, and if at the end of the day, the funder is to get the best advice, then there has to be very good mutual respect. And as far as possible, the partners on the other side of the table must feel it's one in which a real meaningful effort is being made to work together as peers. And I think the other very important thing is that there needs to be real commitment to flexibility. It's very easy to come into a country or work with a partner and have had a good impression of what seems to be required. But once you're on the ground, you may find that things are very different from what might originally have been understood or perceived. And that's when it becomes important, one, to learn from either their own or the experiences of other organizations working in the same space. But one of the most important things to do, and sometimes it's not very easy to do this to get the best out of such individuals, is to work with, if it's on a large-scale project, with capable, responsible local staff or leaders who then can help the initiative navigate the space in which they wish to work, provide the kind of technical and other advice, and provide access in a way that the funder with the local staff will get much greater access to the strategy and policy levels when it's seen that indeed some of your local experts and respected individuals are part of the way the initiatives are led. And I think a very important one, again, I'm tending to spend a lot of time on the mutual trust and so forth, is that at the end of the day, if the partnerships are to be effective, and I've worked in several multi-partnership settings. I think the one that's been introduced is the one of the community health worker think tank, where there are multiple partners working with government, that is the health ministry, the funder, and then partners in the academic, the program implementation space. All of those will have important contributions to make. And I think everybody working in that space, carefully starts to understand what the real relationships are, what the power dynamics are. And if those aren't healthy, then you really don't get the kind of impact that you should. And I think another important factor in this space is that quite often when there are multiple funders working in the same space, obviously to try and achieve objectives that everybody will agree are excellent or good, it's also important that the different philanthropic organizations must be able to collaborate not only with the entities and groups that they're funding, or government if that's the case, but must also be seen to be working collaboratively in that space, so that there might be healthy competition. But sometimes this can get to the point where in the end, battles for turf or influence in the end become an impediment to the kind of impact. And often this isn't necessarily intentional, but I think wanting to get on the ground then makes these kind of aspects tend to come through. So for me, I think if I may conclude, in terms of the partnerships, I think a lot of excellent work gets done. It does require, though, that you have strong local partners on the ground for this to be effective, and it does really require openness and a willingness to learn, and it may change completely the perspectives that the funder might have had originally in coming into that space. And the other is, I think the philanthropic space does have an opportunity to be quite different from, but complement the kind of bilateral or multilateral funding space, because that is, I think, one where the power relationships often are not as equal as they should be. And with fewer resources, I think the philanthropic sector can do excellent and much, much greater work sometimes by understanding the local dynamics and creating space for that expertise, leadership to come through, whether it's at national, highly professional, or even community levels in terms of how you want to go forward. And I've had the good opportunity to be working with very different kinds of funders and philanthropic organizations, from those who have billions of dollars that they are able to provide, those who then provide millions or sometimes smaller grants, but which are impactful. And it's really understanding and navigating that space so that in the end, the local partner can then be as effective and helpful if the funding arrangement is one that provides space for those honest opinions to come through, and for their authority to come through also in helping lead this process and not leave all the leadership to seemingly be sitting with the funder. Let me stop at that point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Themba.